the central question of this, right? Is like, look, you're not going to be self-reliant and leading in everything. And the one that you didn't mention, which is
Right.
generally when people think about, oh, what are strategic, what are like the strategic industries of the future, is dual use, right? And stuff like the solar industry, not super dual use. I mean, like, yeah, on the margin, like it'd be, so you have some solar panels on a, cruiser or something. But the vast majority of that is not the end of the world. I think if the U.S. is if the U.S. is reliant on other countries, and then it's sort of like the question of where you draw the line around. If it's just a play of like, look, these are going to be big industries which will drive a lot of growth and tax revenue. That's a totally reasonable, and like you could have a small down payment as a nation and then sort of reap the benefits going down the road. Like that's one argument. But I guess I'm the question where you start branching out from arms and space capabilities and like chips that go into your fighter jets, and start going further and further away from like the core military technologies. It's an interesting question for me, where you draw the line, or if it's not really a line, it's just kind of like a spectrum of to what extent the government should be supporting domestic industry and comfortable with internationalization and reliance on global supply chains, and supply chains that run through countries like China in particular.
Yeah, I mean, I think for people who are worried that the U.S. is going to fall behind in biotechnology, it's especially concerning because biology is such a comprehensive technology. It's not like just solar panels that do a particular function. Bio is could be applied to so many different things, and to fall behind in such a foundational technology is problematic for the economic security of the future. Also, militaries will need to use biology to do lots of different things that they might rely upon petroleum-based chemistries, now that they should be branching out and not being so dependent on petroleum for. So I think it's a degree of scale. I mean, biotechnology is just so much more useful, has so many more applications than many other technologies, and the consequences of falling behind, I think, could be more drastic. And we see what happens when countries have not invested in the same way during COVID. For example, there are countries who were not at the front of the vaccine line, that because they did not have a pharmaceutical industry, and we see how that affects the health of people in those nations. So, I mean, it's having the technology within the U.S. is, I think, important for medical purposes, but other things too.
I would add one corollary to this, which is if there's anything we've learned from experiences in other strategic sectors, it's that it's about more than technology and market share. It's about infrastructure. It's about building things that can be repurposed in a crisis, or supply chains that are resilient to shock, or facilities that are able to mode switch quickly. Um, you know, when we're talking about biotechnologies, it's not just a matter of who is supplying the service and who is buying it from whom. It's about where we are building like supply chains to procure genetic resources and material, who is sequencing that material and those kinds of DNA, where we're storing that information, who is providing synthesis as a service, whether that's through physical hardware or through some other means, and then who is ultimately able to make discoveries of novel molecules and create novel materials first. And so it's not just a race to be the first in many of these applications, although I think that is important. It's also ensuring your long-term access, and that none of those steps in bioprocessing can be weaponized later on.